So we've gone on the road. Again, we're here in New York, downtown, really in the heart of downtown. And we are at the Renee and Chaim Gross Foundation, which is a special place for us. And we're so grateful to the leaders of the foundation. Brittany Cassandra is the director of collections, and Sasha Davis is the executive director. And here they are. I wonder if you would say a little bit about the foundation, about Renee and Chaim, and you know, whatever else people need to know.
Absolutely. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you, Al, for choosing to make this place your home away from home. We're so happy to have ModPo back in the space. We are the Renee and Chaim Gross Foundation, so we preserve and interpret the historic home, studio, and art collections of Chaim and Renee Gross. Chaim was a 20th century sculptor. He worked mostly in wood, and we have really beautifully preserved their home. Not only can you see works by other artists, but you can also see the workspace down on the first floor. And by coming for a tour, you'll get to see all of these spaces. You can book online through our website, which is rcgrossfoundation.org. We are a 501c3 nonprofit operating foundation.
And currently, we are in the living room of Renee and Chaim Gross, surrounded by the works of their collection, including African arts, Oceanic, European and American, modern arts, including some artists like Louise Nevelson, Jacob Lawrence, Marsden Hartley, and Willem de Kooning. So we hope you enjoy the space.
Sasha and Brittany, thank you for this occasion, and also many, many over the years. We're really grateful to you. Thank you. And Drew Gardner is here, and we're so grateful for you to be here. I have motion detector at home, and it's collecting early, since you're a very old person, early in quotes. It's collecting from the late 90s to maybe 2005. Did I get that wrong?
Yeah, it's roughly correct, yeah.
Great.
And many
other books, but that one is Blaze Fox, and is that the most recent?
It's the most recent, yep.
2025.
That's right, just out last spring.
We're so glad to have you. Well, we are going to talk about two poems by Joseph Ceravolo, or Ceravolo, and they're amazing poems. One is called Migratory Noon, it's short, and the other is called Drunken Winter. Both are available in Penn Sound at the Ceravolo page. But I thought it might be cool and good to get the sound of the poem onto the table, as it were, and ask Lainey to read Migratory Noon and Drew to read Drunken Winter, and then we'll talk about it.
Migratory noon, cold and the cranes in the wind, like cellophane tape on a school book. The wind bangs the car, but I sing out loud, help, help, as sky gets white and whiter and whiter and whiter. Where are you in the reincarnate blossoms of the cold?
Drunken Winter. Oak, oak, like, it then. Cold, some wild paddle, so sky then. Flee, you say. Geese, geese, the boy. June of winter, of again, oak, sky.
Thank you both. Drew, since you're our special guest, you want to pick which one to start with? We'll get to both randomly, variously.
Sure, let's start with Drunken Winter.
Drunken Winter. Okay, let's go around, the four of us, and very briefly just toss into the conversation a word, phrase, line, or idea that we should talk about for sure. Sophia, you first?
I think a line we should talk about for sure is June of Winter.
June of Winter.
Yes.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's resonant with other poets as well. Lainey?
I think we should talk about repetition.
Okay, good. Drew?
I think we should talk about the line, flee, you say.
Yeah. I read that as F-L-E-E, but Yeah, wow, that's a good
I
one.
did too when I first heard it, yeah.
Okay, cool. I think I want to toss in the attempt to liken, to analogize, to liken, using the fabulous pun of like, and the stuttering of like. Okay, Drew, again, because you're our pal, you're our guest, pick one of those 4 topics that you think we should talk about.
I think like is a good one. In terms of, to me, this sounds percussive. So it's almost like a drum solo. Most of these words are single syllable or double syllable words, and they're extremely deliberate in how their rhythm is dropped into them in a very concise way. So it's like a very short drum solo to me, anyway.
Oh, I like it a lot.
Yeah.
All right, since it was my vote, I'll just say a couple things and then we can respond, maybe Sophia first. I see the attempt to liken, to compare, which is either stalled or stuttered or shattered a bit. And I see the liking is, the act of poetic liking is kind of as strong as an oak. You know, it is like it is the main trunk of poetic action. And so I really like the two of them together. Okay, Sophia, you want to go from there?
Yeah, I feel like like is the
You
attempt.
feel like,
yeah.
like.
It's trying to make an association. So I feel like this poem is kind of fractal in nature. It kind of feels like what you can glean through. If you're in a heavy snowstorm, you're like, oh, I think that could be like this, that could be like that. And it's kind of associative instead of obvious. And that's what I think the like is doing.
Fantastic. Lainey.
I want to talk about inebriation and enthusiasm. So the title is Drunken Winter, and it makes me think that there is this enthusiastic repetition, and almost the stuttering is reflecting the inebriation, which could be literal or could be not literal, just kind of this excitement.
So exclaiming oak, oak is partly a drunken inability, like a bit of a stutter, but it's also a kind of exuberance and enthusiasm, like, oak, man, oak, oh.
Which can get louder with a drink, perhaps.
Louder with a drink.
Yeah.
It's a good kind of drunken, it's euphoria is what I'm hearing here.
I'll throw one more thing on and then onto that topic, and then Drew can pick one of the other 3, if you can remember what the other 3 comments were from the 4 of us. I sense, and this is my favorite topic in poems, so it's just me coming out, but I sense a kind of nod toward language education, inculcation, geese the boy. I mean, and that's in quotes. It sounds like someone is being taught how to speak the world, or at least there's a nod to the way things are. And I really like that in the background, as if there is not simply the reader out there beyond drunkenness and beyond winter who might be reading this poem, sober and in June, not in the middle of its context, being talked to, but then inside the poem maybe a young person or someone who's learning what it's like to write a poem when you're drunk, and repeating the essence, geese. Okay. Shall we, what do you think of that education thing? Am I stretching?
I think that you're right that the geese is something that someone's young son might say in a car when they're driving through New Jersey.
Geese.
Yeah.
Oak.
That's how I read it.
Poet driver says, like.
Yeah, so you could say there's a Dr. Seuss style vibe to it anyway, and I think beyond that, a sense of childish playfulness, which is an important part of his poetry. I see, in general, the sense of play.
Great. Okay, so there were 3 other suggestions. Do you remember them, and would you pick one?
I could pick my own since that's the one I remember. Flee, you say, and what I noticed about, this is a very concentrated poem, even though it's simple. It's a lyric poem, on the surface of it, pretty straightforward lyric poem. Lyric meaning that it's something that sounds like it's meant to be put to music or to be sung with a lyre or sung with a
It's
guitar.
also seasonal, which is part of lyric, right?
Yeah, so, and the seasonal thing is huge for this poet, so often these are settings, the season is, and the weather and the landscape are very particularly painted in the poems. But this line was flee, you say, which is incongruous. So in the middle of this fairly, at least on the surface of it, straightforward lyric poem, you have this incongruous detail of a flea that gets dropped into it, and you're like, what, flea? And what I was seeing here is that part of why these poems to me are so fresh, I can read these poems and several times and get something different out of them. I can read these several years apart and get something different out of them. They stay very fresh. It's because there's always unpredictable elements in them. Even though you can read this straightforwardly as this very concentrated lyric poem, what is Flea doing in there? It's as though he had a connotation in his head that he intentionally didn't explain to the reader. And what that does is it makes the reader kind of have to find their own connotation, and it draws the reader into the poem with their own imagination.
Lainey, Sophia, any response to?
Yeah, I love that. When I read the line, flee, you say, I think about how it's easy to make puns and mix up words in this state of exuberance or intoxication, but the you also signals to me that there's more than one voice. There's an interruption, and there's
The you say part.
right, there's a conversation.
Yeah, Sophia?
Well, I like thinking of the winter of the title as being the drunken thing.
So it's modifying winter.
Yeah, so this season is imbued with like a drunkenness instead of a person or the speaker. And so when I get to flee, you say, I kind of read it as the winter being like, why are you looking at something so small? I've offered you oak and I've offered you sky and geese, but you're focused on fleas. Like,
Interesting.
Nice.
Let's turn to seasonality in Drunken Winter, try to understand the of again. Seems like June of winter would be possibly as simple as a sudden warming in the middle of winter. It's probably a New Jersey poem, so it's very temperate. Then you've got geese migrating. That sets us up with Migratory Noon, which is the other poem. So first on Drunken Winter, anybody want to talk about the seasonality of it?
I can see the June of winter as the spirit of the poem, which is, as Drew was saying, this is this playfulness that is really important in Ceravolo's work, that even if it's winter, there is June, which is kind of like this concept of of this, there's an adolescence of childhood, you know, somewhere in the preschool year. So somewhere in the middle of winter, there is this June.
I like that a lot. Any Jersey poet who emerges after William Carlos Williams, who's obsessed with seasonal transitions and the putative ugliness of them, when you say June and winter, that's exactly what you're saying. It's like there is a rebirth in the middle of this nothingness, almost in a Wallace Stevens snowman sense. There's always the imagination of something that's going to flower. Further thoughts on seasonality, Drew?
Well, I noticed sometimes he does inversions. So this is a seasonal inversion, a kind of mental inversion of winter. So June of winter is the opposite of the season. So you could easily read it as just a warm day in winter. That also works. But I read it, and I see this in some of his other poetry, as looking at cycles. He's kind of a meditative poet and a nature poet, among other things. And he's looking at, okay, it's winter right now, but I'm already thinking about, the opposite of winter, summer. He's trying to blend together states of consciousness in this poem about the cycle of time. In other words, just trying to keep in mind, to be mindful of how seasons reflect cyclical nature of time.
Which it takes us to the parallelism of winter, of again. So what part of speech is again?
well,
Because it's different from the usual again.
I read the line, geese, geese, the boy, June of winter. Like June of winter is the qualifier of the boy. So the boy is
Oh,
like this
you
warm
June of
spot
winter,
in the
yes.
cold.
Okay.
Yeah. And so June of winter of again, winter and again can be read as like like winter and again are parallel because it's just showing like the transformative quality of the season. The boy will be the June of winter of again because it'll keep
So
happening.
it's a
He'll keep
noun
growing.
described, it's a synonym for winter. It's made into a synonym for winter,
Yeah.
which is not your typical view of winter. You know, if you're just stuck in winter, you're indoors, nothing's happening, you're waiting for April to come when there's, you know, some flowers peeping out. And so of again is a way of saying that even winter is renewal. I don't know, okay.
It's kind of a platonic, it's two things at once, and this is part of what I love about this poetry is they're like these poems are like switchboards where you can unplug one reference or word or context and replug it in and get many different things out of it. It's a kind of harmonizing of meaning in the poem, right? Chord substitutions, you would say, in jazz. But of again, it's almost like a Clark Coolidge line, meaning that it's like a pure little play of language. It's of the concept of again. It's a use of abstraction in the poem,
Yes.
and it is going back to the theme of seasons and cyclical things.
Yeah, I hear Coolidge there. And I hear Bernadette Mayer in the use of the preposition of as if to make it sound like, you know, Bernadette of Sussex, you know, George of Lancaster, June of winter. There's something, a way that Bernadette had of taking a preposition and turning it into kind of a mock grand pronouncement. Okay, so the geese are probably migrating. Let's get that right. New Jersey, winter, the geese are going where? It's a little late for them to be going south, but that's probably what this has to be. Unless they've been fooled by a super warm February and they've come back early.
Well, having grown up in New Jersey,
Me too.
I can tell you that in the middle of winter, sometimes you'll see a V of geese flying overhead, and they're like, man, they don't have the schedule on point.
Yeah, so geese can
Yeah.
make mistakes.
Yes.
Okay, it's migratory noon, and there are no geese, but what are there?
Cranes.
Cranes. Do cranes migrate?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, they really do, especially during a harsh winter. Okay, so
I see them in Mexico when I go scuba diving. The egrets and cranes are in Belize and in Mexico.
And
you
they're
see the
like,
same ones in
I
New
knew
Jersey."
you in Jersey,
Yeah.
but this is a better.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's go around, the four of us, and introduce topics or foci, you know, so that we can work with. You like foci? Focuses. So, Sophia first, toss one out.
Duality.
Say a little more, please.
I feel like there's a lot of like hinges in this poem. There's a lot of words that could be more than one thing at the same time. And there's also just like the same interest in transformation and cycles.
Fantastic, okay. Duality. Lainey.
Building on that, I feel like there's more than one setting. There's the outdoor setting, but I also see this happening in a schoolroom, and the cranes could be paper cranes, or we've got a school book. We're thinking about lunchtime.
Okay, I love that school book thing. Okay, Drew?
Sorry.
Yeah, I guess I would be interested in a kind of a theme of meditation or meditative poetry, what that might mean.
Meditative poetry, like as in a tradition of a style of meditative poetry.
Or, yes, a style, that's right.
I think I want to make the poem just mildly political and say that peace is a topic. Okay, Drew, pick one of those 4 points to start with.
So Lainey said something interesting about this having two settings, and I think that's a good way to get into this, is to say that you have what is a typical setting of, there's a sort of nature setting here, and then there's some other setting that's branching off of the detail of the school book. So how is this working, or what is going on here in this poem? How does the poem work, right? one of the things I'm interested in this poem is how there's a tension between, or you could even say a fusion of the nature setting of the poem and what seemed like memories branching off of that nature setting. So, in other words, you have cold winter, you have cranes, and then you have cellophane tape on a school book. Now, it's just a simile, so it says like a cellophane tape on a school book, but you also get the sense that it's an associated memory. And part of what he does this in a lot of other poems too, he's mixing his environment, his state of mind in the environment, with memories that maybe are just tangentially connected to it, but he's not filling in the gaps between the two, as you say, settings, or the two connected ideas. So, you know who else does that is Emily Dickinson. She'll intentionally leave out a set of associations, and you can see there probably is one, and it becomes very harmonically resonant in the poem because of that.
Let's do some riffing
Yeah.
on the memory. It is Proustian, I think, and there are going to be people watching this video who cellophane on a book. It's an old reference. So I'll start. I mean, this, of course, was the way my school books were protected and prepared by my mom, usually. The cellophane is either the thing that was wrapping the book to protect it, but less likely if it's a school book, more likely something that a parent or a teacher made you put around it. So it's simply a memory of the feeling of it. And of course, the wind creates a sound that sounds like the memory, that Proustian memory of everything. If I'm walking to school or being driven to school and the wind bangs around, I'm hearing that cellophane on my school book. So it's a school association. I don't know. Lainey, do you have such a thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think of the cellophane tape as in library books, in the school library, like the binding is coming apart. And there's
right.
this cellophane, and connected to what Drew was saying, there's this imagination space. You're a kid in school, and you're thinking about, how do I get out of here? I don't want to get in the car. When am I going to be free? And there's this association with reading and the book and the flapping,
Right.
which is like the flying of birds.
Right.
And the,
Right.
yeah.
And Sophia raised duality, a dualism, and it begins narratively with that. So it's cold and the cranes. Cold, cranes, cold, cranes. Okay, so first we get cranes in the wind. They're migrating. It's a harsh winter, right? Then the cold, the wind banging on the car. So it's two scenes merged. And then, but I sing. There's a shift in feeling and attitude, Sophia. But I sing. It's a big turn right smack in the middle of the poem.
Yeah, I see the but as certainly some sort of hinge away from the previous lines. I also think, but I sing out loud, help, help. Like, help is typically this, like, urgent word, but singing it makes me think it's more playful. Like, this could be an associative memory born from, like, the previous line about the school book in a schoolyard. I feel like the cranes are kind of acting like a marker of a time, and that, I think, comes back up in the final three lines of the poem, where it's this reminiscing, this like pondering of where someone is. Like, the cranes are an image, they're like overlapping lines across the plane of the sky, and it brings up this image of a time. And then it makes the speaker like wistful of the person that maybe isn't like there, that used to be there at the same time.
Wistful. The sky gets white and whiter and whiter and whiter. What's going on?
There's more and more cranes.
It's more cranes. Yes, they're all over the place. And
Snow.
snow.
Clouds.
If you're on your way to school and help, help, it's snowing. It's a school day. I mean, it's a, what do we call
Snow
it?
day.
Snow day. I mean, there's some wish. I had this wish all the time as a
Snow
kid.
day.
Snow day.
Yeah, me too, but I live in Florida.
Is it possible that the help, help is a Beatles song?
Yes, I need somebody.
That's what I thought of. Yeah.
Not just anybody.
It's also Metapedagogical.
Metapedagogical,
Because
meaning,
help, what kind of help does a poet need?
right.
You know,
I don't want to go to school.
Exposed
I
to
want
the
to
elements.
learn from the cranes.
time is going across the sky.
Yeah, yeah. I said peace. So, of course, these cranes are not made, folded with cellophane tape, but that is a great tradition, mostly in Japan, but also in the United States at a certain time, in the 60s and 70s. Right? Ceravolo, born in 1934. So,
Could have been folding paper cranes.
yeah, it's folding paper
Yeah.
cranes. I think it's a reference to that. I think that, he's a little old, born in 34, so he's a little old to be a school kid in the 50s, late 50s and 60s when there was a, can I say, thaw in the Cold War. Cold War, thaw. I'm doing political reading here. Cold War, thaw. We fold cranes, which was anti-nuclear, anti-atomic bomb, anti-effects of atomic bomb on Japan, solidarity with Japan. 1955 was probably the biggest anti-nuke, there was in the late 70s, but biggest anti-nuke popular feeling in the thawing of McCarthyism in 55, which commemorated the 10th year after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and everybody was folding cranes. And cranes are peace. So the migration seems to be a call for peace.
And the
A
reincarnation.
escape from the harsh winter.
Would fit with that. The reincarnation that comes at the end would fit with that.
Yeah. What do you think?
I think
Kind of a
it's fair.
pointed reading. He's not really a political poet, right, Drew?
Mostly not, but there is some political reference, especially to war stuff in some of the poems, but it's dropped in the way Schuyler does with his line about the Frick Museum being splattered with the blood of the workers. It's kind of thrown into a poetic
example.
setting where it sticks out and it's not his main concern. But yeah, it's in there.
I feel like it's in there in the ethos of the being a working poet.
Yeah.
You know?
I think when speaking of metapedagogical, we have this problem and opportunity always when we're filming new discussions about poems, about where it fits in poetic history, modern and contemporary poetic history, partly because we always place a poem somewhere in our syllabus, in the flow of things. I don't know if this is going to end up there, but I want to put this with the imagists. I'll say why.
Put it in the New York school.
Yeah, well, New York School makes more sense, and probably Laney Brown, that's where it's going to end up. But I just want to make a pitch for imagism here,
Yeah.
okay? The last 3 lines of this poem are right out of HD at the end of probably half of her early poems. A rhetorical question. Where are you in the reincarnate blossoms of the cold? It's a question about coldness, how we create images of coldness. In this case, also the crisp sound, the cellophane banged by the wind. How would we answer? Who's you? And how would we answer that imagistic question? And Sophia's wondering what the heck I'm going on about, so I'll ask you.
I mean, I think the you can be read in different ways, but if I'm going to go with this idea that this could be an images poem, where are you? I feel implicated by the question. It feels like a direct question to the reader.
Where are you in all this?
Yeah, like what am I doing?
What's your role?
I'm sitting here reading a poem.
What is your
I guess
role?
That's what I'm doing.
What's your role?
Reading a poem.
Laney said it was metapedagogical. What are we going to do with that? Where are you in this? What's your role, Laney?
I'm reading the you as the reader, the crane, the sun, the summer, time, help, and this manifestation of the imagination space.
Drew?
Well, I think where are you is in some way his poetics. That's the question he's asking himself in many of these poems. And his sense of the way he handles that in the poem is through dealing with representations of internal states and external states that are fused together in some respect. The other thing I would say is that you mentioned imagism, and these are there are many of his poems that seem very much imagistic in that genre of poetry, although never purely. So he's almost like, you could say he's a poet's poet, but he's almost like an outsider poet in some ways. And one thing I notice about outsider poets is they often don't fit into strict genre definitions. So there's half of this poetry could seem like imagism, and the other half like New York school poetry. But really, he blends both of these things together in a way where he doesn't fit in either of them. That's something I always really like.
It is remarkable,
Yeah.
for sure. It also tends to end up the effect of a kind of, and I'm going to use the word discrimination, but I don't mean it as a super negative, a discrimination that causes a poetry like this that falls between, exactly the way Drew was describing it, between being like a movement. It winds up being years before we get to it to be able to put it in the course because it wouldn't go naturally. Look, let's do a kind of a last phase quasi-conclusion here. By looking at the two poems together, making generalizations across the two poems such that it might lead viewers of this video to pick up the poems of Joseph Ceravolo and find more. So you're taking two poems and trying to make them somewhat representative, or just say what the two poems have in common. And I'm pausing because this is a big question, and now I'm going to turn to Drew.
Well, I would say that these poems are closely related in a really interesting way, but that if you look at his fairly recently published collected poems, this is well worth getting a copy of. There's a lot more out there, and he's got more modes that he's using.
Right.
Some of them more fragmented, and some of them more lyrically continuous. So all of it is great from beginning to end.
So that was true,
Yeah.
is true, and also evades the question a little.
Yeah.
So what do these two have in common?
Well, what they have in common is that they're minimalist nature poetry, nature poems with a strong meditative tendency. And I don't know if I would say it's spiritual, but certainly he's thought of in terms of spiritual poetry, certainly psychological or addressing questions of inwardness, especially with that word reincarnate at the end of Migratory Noon, which, they're almost like Zen poems, I guess is what I would say, what they
Yeah.
have together.
Yeah.
Like you might see
Yeah.
in Isa or Dogen. Nature poetry and mental states being handled with great aplomb and with a certain amount of abstraction.
Yeah. I mean, blossoms of the cold, what a phrase. Because first you say literally, no, no blossoms. Then you think, oh, whoa, wait a minute, this is metaphor in a cult of the imagination sense. And then, because reincarnate turns out to be an interesting modifier of blossoms, it doesn't matter whether it abides by meteorology at all. Okay, Lainey, what do you think can be said generally about
I
from these?
agree with what Drew had to say, and I would just add that they're less maybe serious than I would think of as some Zen poems. Like there is the gravity, but there's also a zaniness, if I could say that word. Like there's this element of surprise and the inebriation, the sense of play is in, I think, so many amazing poets and poems. But what they have in common, I would say, is that they're both very precise and very open, which have in common with Emily Dickinson, as Drew mentioned. But they're also, they're kind of concrete, but also metaphysical and dynamic. So you can come back as many times as you like, again, as Drew said earlier, and there's a new way to enter.
There is a comic quality. I don't mean comic like, ha ha, that was a great
Yeah.
joke. But so can we all pause, because we're going to go to Sophia and then me next for final thoughts. But let's all contribute phrases or words that are funny that are comic because of the way they're deployed. And I'll start wild paddle and the use of sky as a verb. So sky them.
I could build on that because cold some wild paddle. We can read cold as a paddle, oak as the paddle. The question of how to move through or navigate.
Right, right. We'd almost play with cold as a verb. Cold's an imperative verb. Cold some wild paddle.
Syntax.
Yeah, okay.
Funny.
Sophia, funny.
Flee, you say?
Flee, you say? Drew?
I think the cellophane tape on the school book is a turn in the poem that has a certain amount of levity to it.
I like Wind Bangs the Car, but I sing loud, help, help. I just think that cry for help is not really, as somebody was saying, not really like SOS 911. No, it's more like, oh, it's a winter, I gotta go to school, or I'm remembering what it was like. Have another one? Funny?
Funny? Like.
Oak, like.
Oak, like,
That's
okay.
just
All right, I
titillating
think
to
we
say.
are up to Sophia to draw parallels
Well,
and generalizations.
I feel like the line cold some wild paddle, it makes me think that the cold like kind of slaps you across the face when you go outside in the winter.
Oh, like if a paddle hit you.
Yeah, it like stuns you, like you've been physically taken by it. And I feel like the poems do that to me. So I feel like across both, they're both kind of doing this like wild paddling around in my head. I think there's a similar expansive specificity in both of them. Yeah.
I'll say something, and then we'll do real quick final words, real quick, just final thoughts. Okay, I really admire an original poet, whatever that word original means, like some unique poet with his own style, who is at the same time hearing the voices of so many colleagues and predecessors. So this poem nods toward other poets. I mentioned Williams, I'll add Stevens, certainly Dickinson, definitely H.D. Ashbery, for sure, we haven't talked about Ashbery and the Seasons. Bernadette Mayer. This is a poet who is alive to the diction and tone of his predecessors and colleagues without footnoting them or quoting them. This is a poet who exists in the community in a way that you don't need to know if you want to just pick up the collected poems and read it without the context of literary history. But if you have the literary history, you've just finished reading Ashbery's Some Trees, or you've just finished reading H.D.'s Sea Rose, or you've just finished reading The Snowman, or you've just finished reading Dickinson's Openness, the reincarnate blossoms of the cold, which has all the paradoxical qualities of a great Dickinson poem, then it's even better. Yeah. Okay, final thoughts. Sophia, quick final thought on this activity. This is a new poet for you, isn't it?
Yes. I guess my final thought will be, I feel like we see so much coldness across both poems, but there's also this like really incredible insinuation of warmth. Just like noon is, you consider noon to be like high noon. That's when the sun's out. That's when you like go outside on your lunch break and you're like able to enjoy the day. Or a drunken winter, like if you're cold, you go to the bar, drink a beer, you're less cold. So I just like that there's these little like sneaky nods to something that feels good.
Mm-hmm. What is our noon winter drink at a bar?
Mine
Yeah,
would likely be different than yours.
well, it's all right. Hot toddy. Is it that cliche? Drew, I want to go to a bar with you.
Mine would be a citywide.
Citywide. Does that warm you up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Shot of whiskey?
Yeah, that'll do it. That's good. Warms you up from inside. Lainey?
My final thought is that although both of these poems are pretty tiny, they're so expansive. They just open endlessly. And I notice another thing that's in both poems is that they both move to image of sky. Expansive.
Yeah, good. Drew?
I think the main thing I'm left, having thought about this for a while, is how inviting the poems are. Like, he's very inviting to the reader where not everybody is, and that his ability to handle classic poetic forms and abstraction is part of how he does that.
Thank you all so much. Lainey, thank you as always, Sophia. And Drew Gardner, you're a revelation. You're a revelatory participant in this conversation. I also want to just recommend your edition, Ingenious Pleasures, an anthology of punk, trash, and camp in 20th century poetry. Also, Blaze Vox. What's the year on that one?
It's University of New Mexico.
It's University of New Mexico.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll say it again. Ingenious Pleasures.
Yeah. And it has...
Was that fun to make?
Yes, tremendous fun.
Punk and camp, cool. Trash? What trash we got there?
Well, if you basically, I'm bringing in a John Waters type of aesthetic
Oh,
into
okay.
poetry.
Got it.
That's where the reference is.
Yeah.
So trash film is
Yeah,
is
got
what's
it.
meant by it. So yeah, punk rock music, trash film,
Great.
and camp sensibility a la Sontag.
Drew Gardner, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.